Hi everyone, my name is Annette and welcome to Nakhateliskitchen. Okay, so today we are going to be baking a Neapolitan cake. A Neapolitan cake basically has 3 different flavors in one cake. You have your vanilla, a layer of strawberry, and a layer of chocolate. So these are our ingredients for today. We have here our margarine. We have also oil, because I will be mixing margarine and oil. We have our sugar, all measured out. And we have our flour. Then we also have our eggs over here. And these are the rest of the flavorings that we are going to be using. Chocolate powder for the chocolate layer. And this is coffee that has been pre-mixed with water that we will add to our chocolate layer. And then we have our vanilla and our strawberry. We have 500 ml of milk. We first take our margarine and then we put it into our mixing bowl. So we'll scoop that out into our mixing bowl. Make sure you scoop everything out. I had already measured 250 grams of margarine. That's 1 cup. First we'll put the margarine and the oil in the bowl. Then we will beat that for a while until it is light and fluffy. And then we will add our sugar and beat that as well. And then next we will add the eggs and beat them for a while before we add our flour, the flavor, and the milk. And then we will divide the batter into 3 bowls, and then we will flavor it according to the different flavors, since we are making a 3-flavored cake.
Annette,
yeah?
What inspired you to get into baking, and inspiration you talk about?
I've always loved baking. My earliest memories of baking were of my mom baking for us. My mom had these traditions where she would bake for every occasion. For instance, like during Easter, during Christmas, we would make these. The tradition was that we would make things like mahamri, donuts, and there usually was a cake. So when my sisters did the mahamri and the donuts, the cake making usually fell to me. You know, those days we didn't have machines, so we did everything by hand. So I learned how to do the creaming by hand. I learned how to do, those days we would do this basic cake where if you did 500 grams of flour, and then the ratio was, I remember the ratio was 2:1:1. So if you had 2 parts of flour, you had 1 part of sugar and 1 part of margarine. That was the ratio. That was the basic recipe that I grew up using. So yeah, I just got used to baking from that time. I've just simply taught myself through social media how to bake different types of cake and different types of flavors through trying, but the basic recipe I learned from when I was really young. As you can see now, our margarine and oil mixture has, we have beaten it until it is light and fluffy. You can see the color has changed. It is now pale cream rather than yellow as it was. So I'm just going to scrape the sides of the bowl to make sure we get everything. And then we are going to add half of our sugar and beat that, and then we will also add the other half after a few minutes. And then we will incorporate that first. Next, I'm going to start breaking the eggs and adding them one at a time. We do this so that we ensure that the eggs are fresh, and also to avoid any shells from getting into your flour mixture. So that's why you break it separately and then you add it. Then we incorporate one at a time so that it gets incorporated into the butter and sugar. So I just put them into this. See, like there's a small piece of shell which I will scoop out, and then I will start the mixer again and then start adding the eggs. Okay, so now that our eggs are completely incorporated, we are going to switch from the whisk attachment to the paddle attachment, which is better for mixing in the flour.
Annette, your first baking experience you required?
So I wouldn't say my first baking experience per se. I would say my first baking experience without the guidance of my mother. So this would have been in high school. I was in home science club, and when we were in Form 1, we were told to bake a cake. So we were divided into groups, and the teacher basically just left us to our own devices. The teacher put us into groups and told us to bake. So I used the knowledge that I had from baking with my mom, and our cake, the cake that my group baked, was actually the best cake. And because of that, it was actually the only cake that came out well. Because I remember there were other groups where the cake crumbled. There's another one where the cake didn't bake through, and ours was the only cake that came out well. In fact, we started complaining because the teacher took our cake and shared almost all of it with the staff room because it was the only cake that was very edible. So we started complaining that they were eating our whole cake. They couldn't share the cakes from the other groups because they didn't bake properly. So yeah, that would have been my first experience baking without my mother's help. On low speed, we don't want to overmix the mixture. So you add a little bit of flour at a time and interchange that with the milk. So I add flour and milk until I finish the whole mixture and I get the consistency that I want. I want to avoid over mixing this, so I'm going to continue. I'm going to scrape the bowl and then just mix it a little bit by hand with a spatula, just to make sure that everything is well incorporated. And then we'll go ahead and divide it into 3 bowls so that we can do our 3 flavors. If you mix your flour too much, you will end up over mixing it, and if you do that, your cake will not rise well. So to avoid that, you just mix until the flour is all incorporated and it's at the right consistency. Once you reach that level, just stop mixing. So now I'm going to divide the batter into the bowls so that we have 3 portions. I'll try to make them equal portions. And then when I'm done dividing, I'm going to add different flavors into each portion. In this bowl, I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. I'll add 1 teaspoon of strawberry.
Experience in the quality with your different clients. And what goes through your mind when a client approaches you and they want a cake? What goes through your, because it's also a creative process, when it goes through your mind?
It has been a learning process because, as I said, I have not gone to any culinary school to learn how to bake. I am self-taught. I learned the basics at home, and the rest I have learned through YouTube and other channels like that. So I have done a lot of research. I watch a lot of shows, and sometimes things don't come out as I expect. In fact, I have repeat clients who will order a cake for me, and then maybe something goes wrong, and I tell them, like, you know, this time round I feel like this and this didn't come out well. They'll take the cake, they'll try it, and then they'll tell me this is where it went wrong, or they tell me, no, you are too harsh on yourself and this was actually really good. And I continue learning through that. When I have a new client is when I actually get really nervous, because I don't know. My first thought is, I always panic. Like, what if the cake doesn't come out well? What if they don't like it and they go tell people that I'm a terrible baker? What if I'm a fraud? Sometimes I feel like a fraud. But for the most part, I have good reviews. Once in a while, I have people who complain that maybe the cake came out a bit dry, or it simply wasn't what they were expecting, and that is simply because I cater to different people, and people have different tastes. And you might find maybe they asked for a particular cake and they didn't like that one, but if you give them another flavor another time, they might like that one as well. So I try to take criticism positively and learn from my mistakes, and I keep trying to make myself better. I keep learning. I watch as many videos and tutorials as I can, and shows, so that I can learn from my mistakes, and so that I can learn from what those guys are teaching. These are ready. I had prepared my tins. I have lined them and oiled them to keep the cake from sticking to the bottom of the tin. And because I only have 2 baking tins of the same size. These are 8-inch baking tins, so the 2 layers will go in together. I don't want it to be too thick or too runny, so this is the perfect consistency. I'll flatten that out. Okay, so I'm done with the vanilla layer and strawberry layer for a Neapolitan cake. I am going to go and preheat the oven. Then I will come back when we are going to finish our chocolate layer as the vanilla and strawberry layers bake. So as our other 2 layers bake, we are going to do our 3rd and final layer, the chocolate layer. So we have the basic cake mix, and to that we are going to add about a 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. So we will just add that in, and then we will mix it with our cake. And we are also going to add some coffee, some instant coffee mixed with water. The coffee helps to intensify the flavor of the chocolate, so we will just add that in as well. And a tiny bit of vanilla flavoring, also to enhance the flavor of the chocolate, just a little bit, because we don't want the vanilla to overpower the chocolate. And then we will just mix everything together until there are no lumps from the chocolate powder, and until everything is well combined. smells deliciously like chocolate. This is called folding in. We are folding in. See, it has a beautiful chocolate color, and I know you can't smell it, but it smells beautifully like chocolate. I especially like chocolate, so so this is one of my favorites. Chocolate layer is ready. We'll just wait for the vanilla and strawberry to bake, and then we will put this into a baking tin and we will bake it as well. Now we are going to put our chocolate layer, the final layer, in the oven. The other two are out. So we are going to bake this one, and then we will be ready to decorate our cake once they have cooled. we finished baking our cake, and this is the final product. We were baking a Neapolitan cake, which will have strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate layers. To watch this and more, get Zuku TV. To get connected, call the number below.